There's no way we can expect a 23-year-old person to be able to provide content and expertise to a CFO. We should create more content for our customers, more expert content that differentiates our company, exudes our expertise, shows that we understand where the world is, and shows that we understand our customer and helps them a lot. And we took a blank slate and we said, that's the goal that we want to accomplish. There's no fucking way we would hire an SDR to do that job. There's no way we can expect a 23-year-old person to be able to provide content and expertise to a CFO or a CMO or a VP of RevOps, or anyone for that matter. They can provide the advice on how to be a good SDR, and they could provide advice to people that are earlier in their career or in college about how to become one, but they're not going to give advice to executives about how to run or optimize whatever their job is doing. I got a nice outline of topics and a couple of announcements that I'll share as well, and then we'll get into the Q&A part. For those of you that know, my interests as a B2B professional and quote unquote thought leader are very much expanding. Looking at the effectiveness of outbound as a strategy and the SDRs and the salespeople. Where 5 years ago I was like, forget the SDRs, let's just focus on marketing. I'm getting very interested in all of the go-to-market motions that are happening. Partner, outbound, events, website, product-led, all the different motions that we run as professionals. And I think there is a massive opportunity, and the people that come up through marketing operations and demand gen are most equipped and most well-suited to take on the role as go-to-market strategy, to connect all the departments together, to look at data holistically, to be able to optimize both for pipeline creation, pipeline conversion, and account expansion. I just see a very large opportunity, and I think the people that are on this call and the skills that you've developed in terms of looking at data, marketers and marketing operations people look at data entirely different than how an SDR manager does or how a sales leader does. We've grown up that way. We always have data. So I just want to put that as a call out as you think about your long-term career trajectory. I know it's not a popular role right now. I know that RevOps is that role. Over time, companies will break ops and strategy as two separate things, and there will be a role called go-to-market strategy that is effectively the chief of staff for the CRO and the CMO, and that person is going to architect what we measure, why we're measuring it. We make recommendations of how we invest across the entire go-to-market. We report and we do FP&A work with the CFO and the finance team. And we're not only looking at CRM data, but we're looking at investment data and budget data. There's a real opportunity here, and I think it's going to be a critical role for companies. Experienced CMOs and CROs did not grow up in the days with all the data and all the technical and working inside of Salesforce. Most of them were already an executive while that stuff was coming up. Our generation, our group came up as all this stuff was inventing, and we're native to data, we're native to tech, we're native to looking at it this way. And so I just think there's a large opportunity for people. I just wanted to throw that out there as we get into it. There'll be further announcements coming. We'll do a little special release on this one. As of last Monday, I became a limited partner in Hatch. Hatch is a content production agency for dark social. They take all the video that we and all the content that we produce here and post-produce it for podcasts, for YouTube long-form content, for LinkedIn short form, for TikTok short form, for YouTube shorts, and all do that in an incredibly cost-effective way. And so I just believe deeply in dark social, and I think the model that Hatch has built is incredibly useful for a lot of people that want to start a podcast, listen to our podcast and want to try it, or are already doing it and looking for ways to make it more cost effective or just more effective generally. I'm really excited for that partnership overall, and we'll continue to support that company. Okay, let's get into it. Part of the topic that I wanted to start with, and sort of with my prelude about looking at everything, not only just in marketing, is really regarding outbound today. And I want to call back because I love that we record this podcast, and I've been doing it for so long, because you can go back to 2019 and 2020 and 2021 and 2022 when I produced content where I forcefully challenged the SDR model and how it was working and how it wasn't customer centric and that it wasn't driving real results and different things like that. All that stuff is documented. And you could see in the data during that time that the function was ineffective, that they were overspending there, that it wasn't that scalable. But the economy and the positive business growth overshadowed that and allowed that type of stuff to just get by. It allowed that function to just get by. And now, a couple years after that, almost every company out there is questioning, do we need an SDR team? Should we just reduce our headcount by 50%? Even down to the level of what is the ROI of our SDRs, because they don't collect the data to track it. And so the current state of outbound right now, outbound drives revenue for companies. Generally, what we see in the data, 15 to 30% of new business revenue comes from demand or intent that is captured through outbound activities. That it's not efficient, that it costs too much money, and the amount of SDRs do not support the cost that goes into the headcount and the tools and all the data around it do not support the overall effectiveness. It's not cost effective. And that the point that I want to highlight here together, and something that I think that some of the people on this call can solve for their own companies, is how do we collect the right data to be able to optimize and make these decisions around what we do in outbound, what activities we do, what type of signals that the team acts on. Should we scale up our SDR team next year? Should we is there certain types of SDRs or certain types of activities that are working well? All of that data right now generally is a black hole in outbound. And the only thing that they collect is the data necessary to pay the SDR if the meeting got booked. All the data that they collect is to administer the compensation plan for the people, not to optimize the overall system and make holistic go-to-market decisions around how the SDRs play in to the larger go-to-market strategy. I will also note when it comes to outbound that if you are currently a BDR or SDR, and you know that in your job, what you're doing could be automated by AI, you know that there's not a lot of thought going into it, that you're just making 100 calls, that you're just taking the data that you have and doing it, and you're not using the power of your brain and your intuition and your creativity, that I can tell you for sure there are companies running experiments right now with AI to drive outbound messages, and they get better results with an AI bot than they do with their 20-person SDR team. It's happening already. And so what the function of outbound and the function of SDRs is going to change dramatically, and I think that it's going to happen fast. I'm not out here ambulance chasing saying every SDR job's going away next year, but I'm saying that low-value work done by not very experienced people that isn't customer-centric will be removed by AI. And so if you're in that role, I do think that we're going to go back to basics or go back to how business development used to work before the predictable revenue model, where the people that are responsible for business development are highly competent, have great connections in the industry, are respected in the industry, really know what they're talking about, and focus on developing large businesses and partnerships, strategic accounts, partners that can get you into hundreds of accounts if they're done well, tier one type of accounts. And that role is going to change dramatically, accomplishing the same core goal of creating pipeline with target accounts, but doing it in an entirely different way. And then for all the SMB and lower market type of stuff, a lot of that stuff is going to be automated over time with AI, is my belief. So I want to get into the one practical thing around the data. We should, as go-to-market leaders and as revenue operations professionals and anyone that's responsible for figuring out how are we going to create more pipeline with the same or less money, we should be able to collect the data that we need from the outbound engine to understand very clearly what are the signals that drive our SDR and sales team to take action with customers that lead to high sales velocity, lots of pipeline production, high conversion rates, and generally a better productivity out of our human capital that we're investing there. We need to know what the signal is, and we went through this yesterday, last week, but I'll go through it in a little bit more detail. What are examples of signals? And we should know every single time that there was a signal and then our sales team took action. A buyer filled out our demo form. They downloaded a piece of gated content on a LinkedIn lead gen form. We had intent data from an account that came from 6 Sense, and then we took it and we went to ZoomInfo and got those 5 contacts, and then we went outbound to those 5 contacts because we only have account data, so we just picked up accounts. The driver was the intent data. We had a G2 form. Somebody attended our webinar. Someone registered for the webinar but didn't attend. Some account was on our website. A partner had an introduction. There's a ton of ZoomInfo cold list poll. I could go on for a while about all these different signals that are happening, that something happens and then the sales team takes action. And then we need to be able to track and acknowledge that based on the initial signal, we will have clear trends on the overall performance all the way to revenue. If you take the 2 signals, demo request and LinkedIn lead gen form fill, and you take that signal and then you track the follow-ups of those all the way down to revenue, you will see clear patterns that the demo requests convert way higher than the LinkedIn lead gen form, regardless of how good the SDR is, how fast we followed up, what channel we use to respond, just because the buyer intent is so much different. And so these signals that we're looking for is to try and quantify and aggregate the intent of the buyer based on the signal that our sales team took action on. And then if we were able to measure that, and we do this in marketing side is handled very well already. We basically can know, okay, that was a demo request, that was an ebook download. If they went to our webinar, we know generally and can track the signals of why our sales team takes action based on marketing things. But all the things that sales is doing on their own, intent data, cold like list polls, going into the CRM and just picking out a set of accounts, getting a list from their manager that says, hey, go after these 20 accounts this week. Any of those things, the reason that they're reaching out is not tracked in the CRM. The pure outbound, not marketing past to sales, the pure outbound motion is basically a black hole and poorly tracked. We need to be able to close that gap and then look at all of the signals, the marketing signals and the signals that SDRs and sales using, and look at them holistically and say, what are the best signals for our entire go-to-market? What is the signal telling you? This is for the chief revenue officers and for the SDR managers. Where are the things that our sales team is doing where they have the highest productivity? And where are the things that our sales team is doing where we have the lowest productivity? And if we just got rid of all these low productive things, how much less headcount would we need? And if we had that much less headcount, how would that impact our quota for the rest of the people that are here and the percent quota attainment of that? And you can see how just removing all this low value work and sadly, the people that do the low value work, cutting the bottom 20% of your performance on a sales team or SDR team is pretty normal. You do have a thing. So getting rid of those people and then having all the high performers be able to hit quota, be able to, deliver the results that we need in the business at an appropriate cost, be able to feel like we're winning, not losing, be able to have salespeople take actions with confidence that they're going to get a good result, that they're talking to a good person, that it's a qualified account, that that person wants to talk to them. There's a lot of future magic in this particular part, and it all comes down to being able to attach the signal that drove the sales team action and then be able to track that all the way through, not just on the lead or the contact, but all the way to ARR, pipeline, and close one revenue. So that's something I'm going to be studying quite a bit because I work with a lot of companies, and companies ask, hey, we think we have too many SDRs. And then we look at all the data. We spend we're looking at a lot of stuff, but part of it is to look at what they ask for around the SDRs. And often it's just inconclusive. It's just not conclusive about what they should change in order to make it work better because they lack the basic data to be able to see it and make those calls. So for the ops professionals listening to this, that could be an action for you to go and look and say, do we actually track that stuff? If not, can we put that type of stuff is pretty simple to put in place overall. For the marketing people or the marketing leaders that are now starting to own all pipeline, not just marketing sourced pipeline, that own all pipeline, you are now invested in how well the outbound engine works. You're now invested in how well the partner engine works. So being able to just get out of the marketing source because it came through the website, that we should only spend their time there as marketing leaders. When we get gold on all pipeline, all the different ways that we create pipeline matter and should be tracked so we can make decisions off them. I'm going to go on a small tangent here because I am one of the people who popularized looking and optimizing for revenue and pipeline that comes from your website as a surrogate for how much demand you're creating. And I've thought about that, and I've started to rethink my position that why, just because marketing owns the website, why, if a buyer comes to the website, is it deemed marketing sourced? Why would it be deemed that way? There's the business, the website is a business. It's almost like your store. It's almost like your storefront, and everyone in the business is impacting who comes to our store. Customer success, doing a great job of having our customers be more successful and renewing and having testimonials and presenting to all of our customers and talking in dark social, all that stuff is driving more people to come to our website. So why, when a buyer comes to our website and submits a form, do we deem it that it was marketing source and 100% credit goes to it when all the teams are impacting it? As I think about it, the real solution is to just get out of the departmental level credit game to try and deem that certain go-to-market motions belong to certain budgets, and so we're just going to deem all the credit there. I think that's actually the root of the issue. But to get back to the main point, I think as marketing leaders and as anyone on the go-to-market team that is responsible for the pipeline production across the whole go-to-market, we have to start looking not only at the stuff that we own in marketing, but everything that produces pipeline in the business. With that, love all the faces here. Would love to get into some Q&A. It could be related to that. It doesn't have to be. So let's get into it.
All right. Skylar's got some follow-up questions based on that topic. So I'm going to bring him on live.
Hey, Chris. So this is something I've been thinking about lately as well, across like multiple different problems, but it sounds like you're still working through it too when we're thinking about the signals, right? So we have the technology that enables this, right? There's also some that you don't necessarily have to have technology for. You can get it from qualitative feedback as well. But when I'm thinking about the technology that enables signals, identifying like what signals are impactful, and not only that, but how to increase the signals as well, to even have like a large enough sample size to figure out like, do we have enough data here to know if these are impactful? Not to mention the back end process of saying, okay, how do we aggregate all this data together? We're talking merging map, CRM, and ERP effectively here if we want to get like, started bringing like financial calculations into it. But I'd love to hear any sort of headway you've thought about on how to even start identifying the signals, or like kind of like where to pull on the thread, or as well as like what you might need to do to be able to increase the signals to begin with, if you don't have enough, or if you don't think you have enough.
Yeah, so I would say that the impact and perceived ROI of tracking this gets larger and larger as you have more headcount. As your costs go up, you also have more signals most likely. So let's just do the math. Let's pretend you have 10 SDRs. So you have 10 SDRs. Those SDRs have to make 100 touches a day, 5 days in a week. That's 500 touches times 10 people. That means you're making 5,000 touches per week times 52 weeks. You got 25,000. If I'm doing my math right, 25,000 touches. Actually, it's more than that. 250,000 touches. And then you have 250,000 reasons why your sales team reached out when you just in a year and you only have 10 SDRs. So then scale that up by 10. You can see how the volume of the signals multiplies with scale. Should you do this when you have 2 SDRs? I don't think so. I think somewhere between 5 and 10, and it doesn't have to be an SDR, 5 to 10 people that are doing outbound activities. I think that is the appropriate time to really prioritize tracking this and where you would get a potential significant result by having it in place. I don't think that it's as complicated as connecting to the ERP and marketing automation. Like maybe for an early stage company, they haven't figured out how to get marketing automation data into the CRM. I'm sort of assuming that you can figure out how to do that, that you know that when someone submits a demo form that it's passed on to the leader contact and you can track that in the CRM. I'm assuming that you're past that point. So most companies already have that data. They try and copy it from the leader contact onto the opportunity object, which will get you most of the way there. But if a lead ever re-enters your funnel, it'll overwrite that data. Your historical lead numbers will get wacky and go down. A lot of people experience that where they can no longer trust their historical data because it's being overwritten as leads. It's not a linear process like someone becomes a lead and then never becomes a lead again, or that your sales takes action on someone and then they never take action on that person again. So every time they recycle or re-enter, if you're using the copy data from lead contact to opportunity, you're just overwriting historical data and messing up your historicals. So the current best practice is to use a custom object that connects all the data, the campaign data, the lead and contact data, the opportunity data, and then potentially later downstream actually post-customer sale. And connects that all onto one object where you're just writing data that you already have onto one place so that you have all the data in one object. You don't have to do cross-object reporting. And when you pull it out of BI, you like don't have, when you pull it out to look at it in BI or another system, you don't have to do all this data manipulation from the CRM before it goes into BI, that all the data in the CRM is the data. And then if somebody's CFO or someone in FP&A team is looking at the data in BI, and you're trying to replicate that in that report in Salesforce, that you actually can. And that's a core issue that a lot of companies have when they try and manage this. So the custom object becomes clearly the best solution. And then the marketing data you already have, or most companies have the capabilities to put it together and track UTMs and that campaign data and push it onto the custom object. The blind spot is all the stuff that our sales team does when it's not based on a marketing activity. And this sort of comes down to the siloed departments and the credit and all this other stuff is sort of potentially where we got here from this. And so at its simplest form, what we want to know is every time the sales team takes action, why did they take action? So the simplest form would be have the sales team document, fill out a pick list or something like that of why they took action. That would be like the lowest level one. Is it perfect? No. Does it add work to people? Yes. Is it potentially inaccurate? Yes. But that would be like the lowest starting point, just philosophically or theoretically. Then if you wanted to work up, then you would try to automate and you would try to have all that data and look and say when our sales team takes action, and then look back at what happened to that contact and be able to automatically pull and put that in of what was the signal that drove that sales team to take action. And then over time, you'll realize that certain signals should not be used to deploy sales team actions because they're so low productivity. And you can just as a go-to-market team, you can eliminate those as part of the mix. You can stop investing money in marketing dollars that create those signals, for instance. And so it allows the team to operate holistically. So that you maybe have a follow-up or a couple of follow-ups, but the real difference here is, are we copying data and we're using the opportunity as the centralized record that we look at, or are we using a custom object, which tends to be much better data quality, but slightly harder to implement. But those are the two main ways to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on the same page with you there for most of that. And I think where you were getting at towards the end is maybe where I was starting when I was thinking about, okay, if we're assuming these people are doing these activity, like what's driving that activity, and then being able to take that data and start to really scrutinize it to try to figure out, like, okay, what activities are actually leading to productivity, to leading to, ideal outcomes. And in my mind goes straight to like pull the data out, do regression analysis, things like that, or whatever, or just sometimes you can just look at it and get a feel, but I like the math. So, but but between that, but I was thinking about like,
I want to add one point here real quick.
yeah,
Let's look at intent data specifically that drives outbound. A lot of companies now use, whether it's an ABM platform or some type of first party and or third party intent. And like there are a variety of different intent signals that are coming in, just like you used to have a variety of MQLs, right? A variety of different types of MQLs. It's almost the exact same issue. And so why can't we know, okay, this signal happened, which then puts this person set up into some queue that they're going to go into a sales engagement sequence. And then the second they go into the sales engagement sequence, then we know why what drove them into the sequence, and then immediately copy that. And then all of a sudden you can know, because most companies are using intent data but have no way to optimize. And not only optimize between different intent sources, but also optimize across all the different signals in the entire go-to-market outside of intent data. And so some platforms make it really hard for you to tease that out, and they try and like basically black box you and just here are the accounts, and we're not going to tell you why they're in here. I think a lot of people are starting to not like that and looking for more transparent and open platform about why they're actually in the group, so that we can track it and we can make decisions against it. First party website visitor could be one thing, and then even segmented down to pricing page visitor, demo, homepage. Like you could even go to that granularity. You'd be able to see the differences between first party intent data and third party intent data, which maybe those vendors don't want you to know about. Maybe they don't. That's why it's potentially why it's a black box. But we really need intent data is a perfect one, because it's basically just giving you a different reason of why somebody is MQL scoring, and they're giving you an account instead of a person. You have to go out and find that account, but it's basically an MQL score for an account. And so we should be able to understand what is feeding that MQL score and what are the things inside of that score that actually matter. I cut you off. Did you have?
No, I was saying, no.
I read your mind. Is that the direction?
Yeah, you went the direction, because I'm thinking about,
Okay, cool.
when we're thinking about intent signals around software, what would be looking at, because there's going to be noise in that too, but over enough of it, we can start to almost like the same way we do with pipeline sources, right? When we look back to see like, how does that impact sales velocity? Maybe in this mindset, it would be like, how does it impact a deal actually getting created, an opportunity being created, and then sales velocity too. So
it's really just a simple commitment to collecting the data that we use for outbound the exact same way we do for everything that we do in marketing. It's weird. As of recently, I've been thinking about SDRs as just another version of a marketing program. It's telemarketing.
Yep.
And so you could invest the money on 10 SDRs, on $1 million a year in advertising, to go to that conference, or some variety of them. But it is just, and it scales just like advertising. You get diminishing returns. You have to increase headcount just like you would. So I've started to look at, and many companies have done this before me, but this is just a realization for me, of like, just put SDRs as one piece of one slice of the pie for your marketing program budget. And then you can make a decision holistically, not we're going to spend this much on SDRs and we're going to spend this much on marketing. We need to be able to look at them, I think, together at this point now. So that's another core insight. And as a marketing leader, if you looked at it that way, you might find, like when we stack it up, 20% of the investment that is being deployed at this company to create pipeline is on SDRs. And if I was in charge of creating all the pipeline, I might only spend 10%, and then the other 10% would go here, here, and here. But the siloed nature of how the budget gets split, I think, makes it harder to see those insights and make that type of macro decision.
All right. We are going to transition to a different topic with a pre-submitted question. All right. So this is a follow-up from last week. Hypothetical context around extended sales cycles and a board with limited patience. How many of y'all have been there? We've been there. They're in the process of implementing an entirely new demand strategy, transitioning from lead gen to demand gen, on gating content and adjusting goals on reach and frequency to increase exposure. We're shifting from CPLs and lead volumes. What are your top 5 metrics, including sales efficiency, that you'd prioritize? Consider dark social, no access to ABM intent tool software at this time. How do you succinctly showcase this early success to your board?
I was asked the question a couple of weeks ago, sort of in this vein of long sales cycles. The board part wasn't in it, but it was generally the same question. And I thought about it a lot, and I re-listened to the episode, and I had sort of a new thinking on it. That when you have long sales cycles and you're trying to show impact quickly, what is the most effective thing to do? To focus on marketing to accounts that are already in your pipeline. That's you're not going to be able to take, if you have a 12-month sales cycle and you're going after accounts that aren't in your pipeline, it's going to take you at least 12 months to show a revenue impact. if you're focused on the 16 accounts that are in stage 3, stage 4, or stage 5 of your sales process, and you're marketing to those 16 accounts in the buying group, you might be able to show an impact in 2 months or 3 months. And so I think having a focus on if you're trying to show impact fast, having more of a focus on converting active in pipeline deals could be a great way to get there, especially in lieu of having account data that shows which accounts have been on your website. And if you don't have that stuff, you're going to have a tougher time. But I think more of a focus on the people that are already in your sales process, I think, would be a great start. And with that, what are the top metrics that we should be looking at? And I think that if we're trying to make this change, we should be looking at go-to-market team metrics, not marketing metrics. We need to be when we make this change as marketers and we're trying to change from lead gen to demand gen, what are we trying to do? We're trying to optimize the efficiency of the entire go-to-market. And that's the reason that we do it, because it's not only the marketing dollars that are wasted when you run a lead gen strategy. It's then all of the, if you have 50,000 MQLs, all of a sudden you need 20 SDRs to just follow up with the 50,000 MQLs. Then you have a huge SDR expense, and then you have the tech and the infrastructure and the enablement and all the other stuff for 20 SDRs and the management overhead, and then you have the sales resources. And so the reason that I started evangelizing the lead gen to demand gen change is simply because it's a smarter, more efficient go-to-market motion that's started through marketing. And so sales velocity becomes a big one, but I would even break that down. And I would look at win rate, ACV, sales cycle length, and hero pipeline created. So you got all four of those core metrics that are viewed typically as sales metrics, but they're really go-to-market metrics. Hero pipeline creation is one of them. So you can look at the flow of new business pipeline created based on the hero date. I think is another nice indicator, but you'll move that metric faster by focusing on accounts that are in market. So, and then I'm not, as I think about this more and quote unquote, showing an impact, I think it's kind of interesting to think about looking at just how many meetings are we able to get with qualified accounts, regardless of the impact of those meetings, just to get our team reps and to prove that we can talk to the right people. I do not love the gift card strategy. I think it's disingenuous, and I think it's not the right strategy, but gift cards would be incentivizing someone to sit on a demo could be one way of doing this. But there are a lot more customer-focused, value-driven things that you could do to get your target accounts in an initial sales meeting so they start understanding about your company, even if they move to close lost right afterwards. It just proves that we can go out and get the right people and engage. So I think if you're trying to make a short-term metric, number of sales meetings with qualified accounts, I think, is an interesting short-term metric to look at to demonstrate short-term progress. Not to be the metric that we use to measure the long-term success of this change, but as a short-term intermediate that the company would understand that says, oh, last quarter, we had our top 1,000 accounts and we only had 3 meetings with our top 1,000 accounts. And then we started changing to this strategy, and now all of a sudden we had 13 meetings and it's up by 400%. And just that, I think, could be a potential indicator of showing short-term success as well, in lieu of, knowing what accounts are on your website and other things like that.
Awesome. I got a follow-up DM about the SDR program strategy. So this person has SDRs that handle inbound and then SDRs that handle outbound. So outbound, they're, doing cold signaling, just like you mentioned. And then they're also getting fed through their marketing automation and scoring system lists that they can do whatever they want with. But how would you look at the SDR program broken out by those two distinctions? Any nuances there or advice?
I wouldn't break a team out by this, because most things that are getting chalked up as inbound are actually outbound. An MQL score is not an inbound lead. It's that you have some data and you've been able to architect the data and give someone a score that tells your team to go outbound. Same thing with an ebook download. Same thing with a webinar attendee. Basically anything besides demo pricing and contact sales, which makes up 90% or more of the quote-unquote MQL or inbound volume, are not actually inbound. It's you going outbound to someone that didn't ask to talk to you. So I just really don't like the distinction here. And so you have a segment of buyers that ask to talk to your sales team that are qualified to buy, and those people should just bypass the SDR. Just give your qualified customer the most efficient process to understand and learn, and figure out what you need to do operationally to make that happen and make it happen for your customer. Then you have that bucket. And then the rest of the stuff is you taking people that didn't ask to talk to you and going outbound to them. And so you look at all the other signals as all the available signals to do it, and you have one team. And then you're trying to optimize what are the best signals and what are the worst signals. And I really don't see this inbound outbound distinction. I just find it to be outdated, because most inbound leads are not actually inbound. They just get tagged that way because they come from marketing.
What do you think about signals for account-based marketing programs, or how does that work?
Whether it's a tier 1 account or an SMB company, the signal can be the same. It's an entirely different dimension. So like you have intent data, right? The intent data is looking for account that's on your website, right? And you could have a tier 1 account that's on your website, or you could have some account that doesn't fit your criteria that's on your website, and the signal is the same. And so instead of trying to track ABM as a motion, we should be tracking our accounts that run through the motions. So let's talk through that distinction. So then we have our tier 1 account list, and we're just filtering to the tier 1 accounts. And then we see that some of them were getting outbound, and we got 4 meetings through our website, and we get 2 meetings through events, and we get 6 deals through partner. And you have the entire go-to-market motion, and then you're looking at how do the tiers of our accounts flow through these motions. I think is a much better way to look at it. A lot of companies that are trying to prove the value of ABM will override that the SDR went outbound, or will override that the person came in and filled out a demo request and say it came from ABM, and lose the data that the person filled out a demo request or something like that. And so ABM is an account tiering and prioritization strategy. It's not a go-to-market motion. And the go-to-market motions that support, you might have different prioritization and investments for tier 1 accounts between partner, outbound, website, events, product-led. The mix that comes from them, the investments that come to those accounts might be different from tier 1 to tier 3, but the motions remain the same. And that you'd probably that ABX is just an integrated go-to-market motion. And we should be probably running some level of an integrated go-to-market motion with all of the tiers of accounts, not just tier 1s or strategics. That maybe our tier 3s are going to be mostly product-led, and then we're going to get some PQL, and then we're going to move that to an outbound motion. It's an integrated motion nonetheless. It's just a lower cost motion for a lower value customer.
All right. Another question about Google search for you. So they followed your advice and, did the ROI analysis down by branded and non-branded, competitor, high intent. They're now trying to consider moving away or lowering branded search as an experiment, because 80% of their conversions through search come from branded. So their hypothesis is if we lower our investment in branded, we will still get these conversions. They'll just come through organic. They only have 2 competitors bidding on their keywords, on their branded keywords right now. So light competition, but still some there. This person's having trouble actually convincing their leadership team to do it for a period of time as an experiment. Do you have any advice or additional data points that they could look at?
You'd have a lot of trouble convincing me to do it too. First off, it's to quantify the cost, right? Okay, we're branded terms. Maybe the branded term is $3 CPC. The volume's not that high in enterprise software, so what? We're going to make this big change to save $3,000 a month and potentially lose 80% of the revenue that comes from branded search. It just doesn't feel worth it to me. It's not even worth the experiment. Just chalk up the $3,000 that it's already working and let it run and figure out what to do with the other, $7.6 million that you have in your budget, rather than trying to figure out how to save $36K a year on Google branded paid search. To me, that's what I would do. I would be focused on trying to lower the cost, get rid of the costs in competitor and non-branded and low intent that are doing nothing, and just reallocate that. And if I was going maybe like it makes sense, but in terms of a risk benefit, like the cost that you're spending on branded terms has to be pretty high for the risk to be worth the benefit. And most cases, I don't see that working unless you're like you have a branded term where there's millions of searches for some reason, like you didn't have your brand right or something changed with the brand. There's millions of searches, many people that aren't looking for your brand. Like maybe that's an instance where it makes sense. But I just, especially in enterprise SaaS, I just struggle to. You do all the work and you spend all the money in all the other places to just cheap out on the $3 click for a branded term just doesn't feel worth it to me in most cases.
Awesome. We've got a question from an old friend, Tori. I'm going to bring him on.
Chris, what's up, man?
What's up, dude? Good to see you here.
Yeah, you too. All the talk about the SDR role, the effectiveness of it, ineffectiveness of it. I'm curious. A lot of what I'm noticing recently, just on LinkedIn and the like, is in the MarTech and sales tech and rev tech space. A lot of these SDRs are leaning more into content creation roles, which I think is great and is a much better approach than just cold outbound and spray and pray. But I'm curious if you see the same opportunity outside of that particular MarTech, sales tech, rev tech industry where, sellers are selling to sellers, marketers are marketing to marketers. Do you think outside of that particular industry, there's a similar opportunity for some of these up and coming professionals to kind of lean into the content creation role, or do you think that should be reserved more for uh, people that have experience in that industry, or maybe should be a key opinion leader or something like that?
I like looking at this in first principles. So, what most companies do is they look at their current situation and they say, like, based on the current situation, how do we change what we have into something else that we want? And they take all the constraints of their current situation and they bring them into their new decision when it doesn't have to be like that. And so, if the strategy was, which I do think there's an opportunity that says, we should create more content for our customers, more expert content that differentiates our company, exudes our expertise, shows that we understand where the world is and shows that we understand our customer and helps them a lot. And we took a blank slate and we said, that's the goal that we want to accomplish. There's no fucking way we would hire an SDR to do that job. It just is what it is. And so in a first principles view, like I'm sure you can take your 10-person SDR team and because it's not working and go outbound, you can try to repurpose them to like run an AI machine or make some commodity content. Like that's basically what it is. That if you rethought it, you might just say, like perhaps one of the people has the skills where they could run Jasper or Copy AI and take all of our podcasts and all the content that somebody else thought about and run the machine to post-produce it and create from that into a blog. That there might be a job there and an SDR might be equipped to do that job. But to actually create the thoughts that go into the content as a young professional SDR that doesn't really understand our customer, especially when you're out of sales and marketing, but in sales and marketing too, that it's just that there's no way we can expect a 23-year-old person to be able to provide content and expertise to a CFO or a CMO or a VP of RevOps or anyone for that matter. What they could provide is they can provide the advice on how to be a good SDR, and they could provide advice to people that are earlier in their career or in college about how to become one, but they're not going to give advice to executives about how to run or optimize whatever their job is doing.
Yeah,
And so
that makes sense. And
I
so,
think
continuing
okay,
on
go.
that thread, then, like, any words of advice for some of those like up and comers who do want to make a career out of working in marketing or go to market, right? You kind of kicked off this podcast episode talking about advantages that like this collective group or generation has with some of the tools that we are familiar with that maybe some of the current leadership might not be, but that's not going to be the case. I would expect for long, or I don't know, maybe it will be because there's continues to be so many advancements. So yeah, like any words of advice for some of those young up and comers out there that are trying to kind of break their way into marketing or some type of go to market function?
Become great at architecting the content strategy instead of being the thought leader. And so I did this in 2016. We were selling to physicians and neonatologists and people that I would never be the thought leader on. But what was I able to do as a young professional with not a lot of industry experience? I was able to go out to the thought leaders that really mattered and understand their perspective. I understood the clinical data. I went out and did field rides with our sales team. I talked to customers and understand what they cared about and what was important to them. I pitched the product and understood what people got, what questions they had and what they didn't understand, what were blockers and objections. And then I went and found the thought leaders and I interviewed them to position to answer the questions exactly what I wanted my customer to hear. And so there's a big difference between architecting the strategy and being the thought leader. And so I would focus a lot more on being able to architect the strategy. One thing that is definitely not going away by AI anytime soon is qualitative customer research that leads to your strategy. It might be good at analyzing the data. It might be able to pull out surveys and help you get there. But it's not going to get totally replaced anytime soon. And so I think there's a real element there of being able to understand what our customers want and then connect it to figure out how do we create the event with that person on this topic and be able to know at that specific thing that's going to work with this person, this topic, this type of content. I think that there's something really there for up and comers that a lot of companies have thought leaders and no architect. So I think it's a big
that's great
opportunity.
advice.
Amazing, man. How's your biz going while we got you on here?
It's good. It's good. Yeah. Lots of new challenges that I haven't dealt with before. I'm laboring through the world of single member LLC taxes right now. So not anything I would want to bore this group with, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, dude, go for the S corp if you haven't already.
Yeah, I'm meeting with an accountant and getting some good professional advice soon because I'm just in over my head with all that.
Cool. Yeah, we should do like a satellite event, Sydney, something on that for like solopreneurs and things like that. Because I have made a ton of mistakes related to businesses, taxes, structures, how equity, how all that stuff works. So let's take it as a note. Maybe we'll do like a side session for all the entrepreneurs in here.
Oh yeah, I'll be on that one.
Cool. Thanks, man. Great to see you. Sydney, we might have time for one or two more.
We have time for one more. We'll do a last final call, see if anyone has questions. Raise your hand and I'll bring you off mute. We got some good votes in the chat for that solopreneur session that people would definitely attend and take some notes.
Cool.
So we'll get that going, the content plan.
Right on. Do we have another question? I've been sitting here for 3 hours straight doing podcasts and events. So I'd be happy to close a little early if people are good.
I think we're good to close, and we'll have more questions next time.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. We will get that scheduled. Maybe I'll do it in a different format than this one. We'll keep this one like go to market, but I'll do a different one for people that are interested in getting some help on that type of stuff. The early foundation, like from 0 to 10 employees, somewhere in that range. You got payroll taxes, you have state, then you have remote employees, and it's a whole complicated thing in payroll as long as they aren't contractors. So yeah, we'll take that as a note. I'm gonna it was cool this whole episode. Like there was some sidebars, but most of it was all outbound. Like we never got that type of detailed discussion at that level on Demand Gen Live. It was very marketing oriented. I love the growth that's happening in the community and the expansion of the thinking around all the different ways that we can create pipeline. I just think it's a large opportunity, and I'll continue to be pioneering it with all the people here and all the people listening on the podcast. So thanks all for taking the 51 minutes out of your day to attend this one. Really appreciate your attendance. Hope it was valuable. We'll be here again next Tuesday. See you then.